Hi everybody, this is Doreen, Do 4x4, and I'm back today getting started with my birthday cards that I have to make for the month of March. This is the card that I've made for my husband's grandniece. So come and join me and let's get started and I'll show you how I made it. Okay everyone, before we get started with making the card, I thought I'd go over some of the supplies that I'll be using to make this card. So I'm going to get started and show you what I'm using. Of course, I'm going to be using my Score Buddy to score my card. And if you don't have a Score Buddy, you can use a Score Pal, or you can also use your paper trimmer, which I've also used to cut the size of my card. And I did a video previously on helping me find the right paper trimmer. And so far, this paper trimmer has been working great for me. It's by Fiskars. It's the Fiskars Premium. So if you're looking for a great paper trimmer, this is a really good one. So also, of course, I'm going to be using my ATG gun. And I have the 714. And I love this. And I've blinged it up and also spray painted purple, since purple, of course, is my favorite color. So now, some of the other things that I'll be using is, I'll be using my Bow Easy, and I do have a tutorial out there on how I use my Bow Easy. I will be using my glue gun. I've purchased a new glue gun to try it out. It was recommended by Kathy from Paper Phenomenon, and I like this one because it also uses the rechargeable batteries, and it does get very hot. I do wish that it had a pointier tip for when you need to get into small areas, but so far it's been working pretty good for me. I use my foam tape, which I buy by the roll, and then I also use foam dots or foam squares as well. And I couldn't do anything without my adhesive remover tool for when I'm using my ATG gun or the Tombow adhesive. I use this quite a bit. I, of course, use my Tim Holtz scissors. And I use my Making Memory tweezers for picking up small items. And then I'm going to be using this stamp set that's by My Pink Stamper. It's called Family and Friends. And it's a clear stamp set. And if you haven't checked out her stamps, you should check them out. I believe her blog channel is, or her YouTube channel is My Pink Stamper, but she also has a blog where she sells her stamps. It's mypinkstamper.blogspot.com. And then I'll use my glass foam block to adhere my stamp. My clear tape that I use for adding my ribbon using the cheater method. My Distress ink by Tim Holtz, and I'm going to be using the tea dye. And then I'm going to be using some ribbon, and this ribbon I picked up on one of my hauls at Michael's in the dollar bin. And it actually was on sale for half off, so I got it for 50 cents. I specifically use the Memento Tuxedo Black ink when I do most of my stamping. I use my two-way zig glue pen. And I've used the Swiss Dots and the Candy Stripe Cuttlebug folders. And then I'm going to be using the Sentimentals Cricut cartridge and a Child's Year cartridge. So let me go ahead and get my supplies so we can get started. Okay, now that I've got everything cut out, I'm going to go ahead and make my card. So I've taken my paper and I've scored it. I've cut it out. It is cut at 5.5, or actually, it's actually cut at 11. And then I've scored it to make it a 5.5 inch card by 4 1/4. And this paper is by Daisy Bucket Designs. And I grabbed this with some more paper on a haul from Tuesday morning. It looks like this, and it looks like this on the other side. So now that I've got my card scored, I'm going to go ahead and add my bottom layer. Now my bottom layer is just a small sheet of pink cardstock that I had laying around, and it is cut, and I actually cut this at 3 3/4 inches, and then I took and ran it through my candy stripe Cut-A-Bug folder, and I've inked the edges using the T-dye. So now what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and add this layer using my ATG gun. But before I do that, I want to make sure that my happy birthday, I leave space for that. So I'm just going to measure that and lay that down there and come down just a little bit here. So let's get the ATG gun out and go ahead and tape this down. So I'm going to go along my edges, and whenever you use I've noticed when I've used this candy stripe folder, it sometimes will tear my paper when it's going through, and I don't know if that's because my paper is very thin, and this is actually cardstock, so I'm not quite sure why it was tearing that up, but it kind of gives it a teared off edge, which doesn't look too bad. So that's where I'm going to lay that. And I'm going to take that up now I've got that on there. And then what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to open up my card, and I'm going to go ahead and put down the top layer. Now, this top layer, I used the Sentimentals cartridge to cut this out, and this was cut at, let's see, 3 1/4 inches, and this is located on page, if you're using your Cricut without the Gypsy, it's located on page 50, and it's this one right here. If you're using your Gypsy, this is key number 27. So, and it looks like this, like so. And it's key 27. So, let me show you what key 27 is. So it looks like that. And actually, if you look at it, key 28 looks similar as well. So, as I said, this was cut at 3 1/4 inches. And I haven't decided if I want to pop this up a little bit. I think I'm not going to, because I'm going to have my little girl popped up. So I'm going to go ahead and once again use the Gypsy to go ahead and put this down. And I'm going to go on my edges as usual, and then down the middle. And then I'm just going to go ahead and add this on my card. And I've taken and run this through the Swiss Dots folder. And as you can see, I have, or you might not be able to see it, I do see a little bit of the tape adhesive coming up. So I'm just going to take my adhesive remover tool again and make sure I get that up off the card. And sometimes you have to rub just a little hard on there, and then it comes right up. So there we are. So now let's go ahead and add the ribbon. Now what I did for the ribbon is I cut a piece of ribbon at 7 inches, and then I took it and I twisted it in the middle, because I'm going to go ahead and lay this down. And I probably could have cut it shorter, but I wasn't quite sure how I was going to do this at first, so that's why I cut it long. And as I've said before, I'd rather have too much ribbon than not enough. I know some people feel it's a waste, but it's better to be safe than sorry. So I'm going to flip this over, and now I see that I can cut it because I don't need that much. So I'm just going to go ahead and snip it right there. And then I'm going to take my clear tape and tape the one side down first. And I want to check it to make sure I do have it lined up there in the middle. And then I'm going to go ahead and tape it down on this side, like so. Then I'm going to flip it back over again, line it up, and then go ahead and tape this side down. But before I tape it down, I am going to cut some of it off, like that. And then take my tape again, and just tape it down. And then just to make sure that I have it adhered, I sometimes go across as well and add another piece of tape. Now I realize that that will show on the other side, but that's okay. So it looks like that. Then what I've done is I've taken my bow easy and I've made a 1 1/4 inch bow that I'm going to put right there. And I'm going to go ahead and use my glue gun and then just place my bow right there in the middle, like so. Okay, so now I'm ready to add my happy birthday. So this piece of cardstock is actually the other side of what the card is made out of. And it's stamped out and it says happy birthday, and it's using the My Pink Stamper stamps. And it is cut at 1/8 by 2 5/16. And I've popped it up on the back using my foam tape. So I'm going to go ahead and add that right here at the top and kind of place it in the middle, like so. And then I want to go ahead and add my little girl down. Now the little girl is from A Child's Year, and it is on page 29, and it looks like this. And what I've also done is I've cut out the shadow as well, and this was cut at 2.5 inches. And if you're using your gypsy, this is key number 2 on your gypsy. And let me bring that up for you so you can see what that looks like. It looks like this one right here. Looks like that. And it is key number 2, which is that one. So I've already cut it out, and I've inked the edges on, not on the shadow, just on the top layer. And I've inked it with the tea dye again, and I've popped it up with 2 thicknesses of foam tape. So I'm going to go ahead and peel off my foam tape, and I also use some foam squares, and I'm going to lay that right here in the middle. And then what I did was I took, and from A Child's Year, again, I cut out this scalloped with the number 2 because my niece is going to be turning 2. And this is cut at, let me check, on page 2, on page 29, and it is the monogram feature right here. So that would also be key number 2 on your gypsy, which looks like so. Okay. So, and I've also taken that and run it through the Swiss Dots folder. And I cut out the shadow of this, and then I went back and cut out the number 2 using the font feature. And I'm sorry, I didn't cut this out in shadow because this doesn't come in shadow. What I did was, on this case for this one, was I used the hide contour feature to remove the number 2. And I'm going to show you what that looks like on the Gypsy now. I'm not sure how you would be able to do this on your, just using your Cricut. But the number 2, I'm going to go ahead and zoom in so you can see this. The number 2 looks like this. So what I have to do to hide that 2 is use the hide contour button, which is right here. And then as you can see, it has the 2 right here. And what I did was I just picked hide. So now the only thing we'll cut is the scallop oval and not the number 2. And then I went back and copied the same number 2 and went back to the hide contour feature button, which is located under Advanced. And you can see I have the number 2 here, and it's still in the scallop. But what I did this time was I hid the scallop and told it to cut the 2. So that's how, when you don't want to cut something, if you have the Gypsy, you can use that feature. I recommend, if you can afford to get a Gypsy, or you catch one on sale, try to get one, because it really helps you when you want to design your cards and you're not quite sure what you want to do. You can lay it out on the Gypsy. You can remove things that you don't want, and you can add things that you do want. So I really wish that I knew at the time somebody that was looking for one when I found one at Michael's for only $50, because I paid a whole lot more for mine. So let's go ahead and add this number 2 to the card. And I've already got it popped up on some foam tape or foam squares. And I've inked my edges, as I've said before, or maybe I didn't say that. And I'm going to put that right there. So now, there you have the front of the card. So now let's work on how we're going to put in the sentiment. My inside sentiment I got from a book that I use for making all my cards. And the name of the book is called The Ultimate Guide to the Perfect Card. So what I do is I take some of the sentiments that are in here and I reword them to pertain to the card that I'm making. So this one says, birthday wishes and butterfly kisses, someone's turning 2. When the day is done, you'll have had some fun with the running and playing you'll do. You'll flutter about and laugh and shout and giggle the day away as you celebrate your birthday. And then I've just signed it, my name and my husband's name. And in the corner here, I just took some of my Stampin' Up! Pink Passion and stamped out a little flower. And then I colored it in using my Twinkling H2O watercolor paints. So now I'm going to go ahead and put this down on the card. Now I cut this out. After I did my sentiment, I cut it out using my Spellbinders die. And this is the rectangle, the small rectangle. And it's the largest size that you can cut, or the largest die that you can use. And then I went back and embossed it with using the Cuttlebug and the Spellbinders die. And then after I did that, I took and inked my edges using the tea-dye Distress ink. So let's go ahead and put this down. I'm going to use my ATG gun. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and use my Tombow adhesive for this since it's so small. And I'm going to go ahead and go all the way around. And then go ahead and put tape in the middle. And then I'm going to line this up and get this in the middle. And then just go ahead and adhere down on my edges. And then wipe away any excess tape that I have. Now what I also did off camera was I really didn't like that ribbon showing on this side, on the inside of the card. So I cut a piece of cardstock, the width of the card, and put that on top of the ribbon using my ATG gun. Now the other thing that I also did off camera was I couldn't let it go. I had to put some type of bling, even if it was just a little bit, on the front of the card. And so I've adhered some bling on each side of the bow. And then I took some of a flower from this Recollection collection, and I added one of the little flowers in the middle. So that's it. That is the birthday card for my husband's grandniece. Thanks for watching, everybody. Bye.